Okay, so as we get closer and closer to March 2nd, which is the day of the opening weekend of MLS, I'm going to be starting doing some video that kind of leads up to the road to where I'm going to be doing my first preview of the year and the road to lead up to the beginning of the season. And technically the review is actually going to be starting next week because that's when I'm going to be talking about the CCL games that's going to be starting next week. But obviously what I'm going to do in today's video and also in tomorrow's video is that I'm going to be talking about one thing each MLS team can do to make the playoffs, and this is the Western Conference version. The Eastern Conference is going to be tomorrow. Decided to split it into two videos because I can't put every single team on the board. So yeah, that's why I split it into two video. And next week I am going to do one biggest problem that each team is going to be facing heading into the upcoming season. And then I think the very next week I'm going to be starting to do some prediction of the upcoming season, and that's when it's probably, I would say that's probably the funnest video that I'm going to be doing besides filling out the bracket in playoff time, because that's when I'm start making my prediction. But it's also a time where that is going to be one of the most hated video that I'm going to put out, because there's going to be a lot of people that's going to like say, hey, why did you put my team so low in the table? Did you not see what we did this off season to try to improve? I mean, yeah, I'm definitely going to get that in that video, and I can even hear it in my voice or in my head that people are going to make those comments. But either way, let's actually get back to this. And as I mentioned, we're going to be first doing one things that each MLS team can do to make the playoffs, because besides winning the cup, the playoffs is one thing that every single MLS cup or MLS team wants to basically go to. But we'll start with the Rapids, and this is in alphabetical order if you guys haven't noticed. And for the Rapids, one thing that they need to do to make the playoffs is that all the players that they got in the offseason will make an impact. So guys that like Diego Rubio, Benny Feilhaber, Keegan Rosenberry, and oh god, I actually forgot who was the other. Kai Kamara, that was the other guy that they acquired. All these guys, if they can make an impact with this Rapids team, then yeah, they definitely have a chance to make the playoffs. And I said it before with how the Rapids making these big moves that I think they can definitely make the playoffs. Although one thing that I am kind of concerned, and this is kind of like a foreshadow of what I'm going to be talking about in the prediction video, where I'll explain why exactly I picked this team in this standings in the table, is that I'm a little bit concerned about the depth, and that once these guys that they got pretty much either doesn't make an impact or they're gonna get injured, yeah, that's when they're gonna have to go back to their old team that they put for the last couple of seasons, and they're not very good. Okay, so yeah, but meanwhile, FC Dallas, in terms of what one thing they need to do to make the playoffs, well, their youth players in their academy will step up in MLS. And FC Dallas, you know, if they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to hoping that it's going to be what happened a couple of years ago, where when they start building their core and started to basically trying to build a core that can compete for MLS Cup, they brought in a lot of youth players from their academy, and yeah, it was a pretty good success, and they're going to hope that they're going to do that again heading into this year, because I think this is the first year process of them just bring new guys in the academy, since some of the players in their core, mostly on the attacking end, is pretty much no longer with the team. And they're also under a new coach heading into this season, although the coach that they have right now was the technical director for the academy. So definitely it will be something that FC Dallas will do this season, where they're going to bring in a lot of youth players from their academy, which I've been saying that it's been one of the best academy in the league, and hopefully they can basically make an impact heading into the league. for Houston. So they need to have their front three to score and contribute a ton of goals. You know, guys like Elise, Kyoto, and Manotas, all three of those guys are pretty much the heart and soul of this Dynamo attack, and they really need those three guys to kind of get going. And I guess the bonus thing that I will also say about the Dynamo is just don't blow leads. Like, seriously, don't do what you did last season where for 80 minutes you play amazing, and then for the last 10 minutes you just fell asleep. And most of the time when you did that throughout last season, you either blow a big lead that ends up you not getting all 3 points, or you blow a big lead and you end up not even getting 1 point and getting a draw out of that. So that's one thing you could do to making the playoffs this season, is don't blow big leads, and hopefully that front three is going to be as good as it was last season. For the Galaxy, well, just simply outscore their opponent. Now, I get the Galaxy, you know, they're going to try to not concede so many goals like they did last season. And they did bring in Diego Polenta to try to kind of stabilize that defense. And I also heard that they are rumored to bring another center back coming in to that team. So they're clearly working on the defensive side, which makes sense because that was really the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. They scored the third most goal in MLS and they didn't make the playoffs. I mean, that is just absolutely mind-boggling. But just for now, I think all they need to do is just outscore their opponent, because their attack is absolutely lethal, and you know who their name is in that attack. I don't even need to mention who exactly is in their attack and why those guys are just make this team as one of the best attacking team in the league. For LAFC, well, they need to just do what they did last year. I mean, last year LAFC did make the playoffs, and it was a very fun team to watch. And like the Galaxy, they tends to be more of an attacking team. All they need to do is basically have Carlos Vela, Diego Rossi, Diamande to pretty much score those goals, and they're good to go. They're you know, the defense, I think, for LAFC is still kind of a concern heading into this season, considering the fact that they didn't really do anything except bring back the defender that they had last season. But still, I think the attack is going to be just enough. And, you know, I think if you compare the Galaxy defense to the LAFC defense, I would say LAFC defense is just a little bit better than the Galaxy, mainly because, you know, when you saw LAFC last season, they didn't really concede. They came nowhere in terms of the goals that they concede to what the Galaxy did last season. So, yeah, for Minnesota, well, speaking of defense, don't concede so many goals. And I have a feeling that this will be finally the day, or finally the season, where Minnesota is not going to concede 70 plus goals. Why? Because they absolutely break the bank in terms of trying to improve their defense throughout this offseason. They brought in Ozzy Alonso, they brought in Iko Opara, they also signed a third DP, Young Gregors, which will really anchor that midfield. And I have a feeling that, you know, this team, if they just do not concede 70 plus goal, or even if they concede like 50 goals, I think this team could definitely make the playoffs. I mean, you know, this team is kind of similar with the Galaxy, except the Galaxy actually has better attack than Minnesota is. But Minnesota still has very decent kind of attacking player. I mean, guys like Quintero, Ibarra, and they're also going to get Kevin Molino back from that season-ending injury that they have. Same goes with Ethan Finley. This is definitely a very good attack. And the only question I think with Minnesota in terms of the attack is, will Angelo Rodriguez kind of contribute that attack too? And he probably should, because he is the second DP for this Minnesota team. So, yeah, we shall see. For the Timbers, well, the two Diego will just lead the charge. How in the world are they going to make the playoffs? Well, these two guys has been the reason why they've been making the playoffs for the last couple of seasons, and I don't see how anything is going to change. Now, the two Diego, Valeri, and Chara, they are getting a year older now, and it is kind of almost that time where those two guys are probably getting close to basically retire and also head into a decline. So I think maybe a bonus thing I would say that they need to do in terms of able to make the playoffs is just get a DP striker, which they are heavily rumored to get a DP striker. They're heavily rumored with getting Vargas from Tigres, and if that, of course, would be a done deal, then yeah, this Timber team can definitely be very good and be like what they were last season when they made a massive, surprising deep run all the way to MLS Cup. For RSL, so one thing that they need to do to make the playoffs is they just need to confuse their opponents with numerous setup. And I was originally going to put all they need to do is carry the momentum they had last year to this year, but that just sounds pretty obvious. So instead, I think what they need to do is just confuse the opponent with their numerous setup, because let's face it, this team, they don't really have one setup. Mike Pecky has numerous different way to put guys into different spot, and just I think if you're a team that is going to prepare a game against RSL, it's going to be really difficult because you don't know how they're going to set up. You don't know who exactly you have to, like, one day you're going to have maybe Corey Bear in the striker position, and in the other day you probably have Savarino or Joao Plata in the striker position. And, it's kind of confusing of how, is one of them much better in that striker position, or is it the other that we have to worry when he play in the striker position? So that's one thing that RSL can do and use that as an advantage for them to potentially make the playoffs and win games. For the Sounders, well, just get off to a good start. I mean, I know the other thing I would have said is maybe just do another resurgence like what you've been doing for the last couple of years, and really think that the season actually start in July, even though technically it starts in March. But I think every Sounders fan, even though they know that this team has resilience to basically come back and able to dig themselves out of the hole for the last 3 years, you know that this is not going to last, okay? It's if this happens again, I swear there has to be something wrong with this team, and there's got to be some investigation in terms of why in the world is this team like this. Are they purposely doing this where they just don't show up until July and don't show up when it's like, oh, yeah, let's start making a run, so that we got to make sure we got to keep our playoff streak alive. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about playoff streak with Seattle, I think they're the only team in the league that still have not missed the playoffs ever since their expansion year. And I know what you're thinking, well, Atlanta hasn't missed the playoffs ever since their expansion year. What I meant is at least for 5 years, or at least for 10 years, where a team that was joined MLS and basically they still have not missed the playoffs in every single year they're in MLS, and that's what the Sounder is. They have never missed the playoffs ever since they come into the league back in 2009. But next up, it's my team, San Jose. So what they need to do to basically make the playoffs, well, it's simple. Almeida, his tactics, his man marking is going to make this bad team look good. And, I don't know how exactly, what kind of like man marking Almeida is going to do. And from what I heard from expert, the man marking that Almeida is going to potentially use is going to be very unorthodox, and that's probably going to really kind of confuse a lot of team at first. So yeah, maybe Almeida can use that as a way to make this bad team from last season look good. But the bottom line is that everybody knows that Almeida is basically our savior. Like, he is the one that is going to be the reason we're gonna make, if we make the playoffs this season. And and the tactics that he's going to use throughout this season that will ultimately get us to the playoffs will be something that we will definitely remember a lot down the years. But meanwhile, moving on, Sporting KC, I don't really need to say much about this because they just need to do the same thing that they've been doing for the past 10 years. I mean, this is another one of those teams that rarely miss the playoffs, and all they need to do is just keep playing the Peter Vermes system. I mean, if Peter Vermes has the right tactics, or if Peter Vermes have the system that is very effective for the last 10 years, then why not keep using that system and just basically make it to the playoffs? So yeah, I don't really need to say a lot about Sporting KC in terms of what they need to do in order to make the playoffs, because we know they're probably going to make the playoffs heading into next season. Now, on the other hand, the Whitecaps, what they need to do in order to make the playoffs, and one thing they need to do is that they're going to hoping that the squad that MDS is basically built throughout this offseason will make an instant impact in MLS. So it's kind of similar with Colorado and Minnesota, where, you know, it's a team that has gone through a squad overhaul and bought so many different players. Although for Vancouver's case, unlike Minnesota and Colorado, they've been buying players that is not within MLS. Those players that they have bought in are out of their league in the world, and that, you know, we shall see if they can make an impact heading into MLS, and if those players that comes from foreign league will make instant impact. Because if they do, then yeah, this Vancouver team can definitely make the playoffs, and that's one thing that they'll do in order to make the playoffs. But yeah, either way, that is pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tomorrow, I of course will be doing the Eastern Conference version of one thing each MLS team can do in order to make the playoffs. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.